What is the absolute limit of human endurance? Of compassion in the midst of absolute horror? This is not a story of a sweeping armored assault or a daring aerial dogfight. This is a story of one man, his hands, and a promise made in hell. The title poses a stark, almost impossible equation when one medic faced a wave of 100 casualties. This was his only kit. The place, the Hurtgen Forest, Germany. The date, November 16, 1944. A dank, freezing twilight settles over a landscape of shattered fir trees and mud so deep it swallows boots. Here, elements of the U.S. 28th Infantry Division, the Bloody Bucket, are entangled in one of the longest, most brutal battles the U.S. Army has ever fought. They are trying to push through a labyrinth of German bunkers, minefields, and murderous interlocking fire. Every trail was sown with shoe mines designed to mangle feet and legs. The dense woods nullified American advantages in armor and air power, reducing combat to a savage, close-quarters struggle between infantrymen. And in one shell-scarred stretch of this green hell, a young aide-man attached to Company B, 112th Infantry Regiment, is about to encounter a catastrophe that would break most men. His name was Private First Class Richard Cowan. As an aide-man, he carried the standard model 1942 medical pouches. They contained morphine syrettes, sulfa powder, a few bandages, tourniquets, and scissors. It was meant to stabilize a wounded soldier long enough to get him to an aid station in the rear. And his medical kit was nearly empty. But in the Hurtgen, there was no secure rear. The German 275th Infantry Division, though understrength, was a master of defense. They had spent months turning the forest into a fortress. On that mid-November morning, Company B launched yet another assault. They made it barely 200 yards before the German defensive fire erupted. From hidden machine gun nests, Maschinengewehr 42 seconds raked the GIs with their distinctive ripping cloth sound. Mortar. Brown's Nebelwerfer rockets, dubbed screaming memes by the Americans, walked through the trees, showering the men with wood splinters as deadly as shrapnel. Within minutes, the attack stalled, then collapsed. And that's when the real punishment began. The German commanders, knowing the American positions were now static and exposed, began a systematic, devastating bombardment. It was not a brief barrage, but a sustained, hour-after-hour deluge of high explosives and steel. By 1400 hours, Company B's casualty reports were spiraling. The company commander, his voice crackling over a field radio, reported over 30 men wounded and unable to move. The number was climbing by the minute. Shrapnel wounds, traumatic amputations from mines, severe gunshot wounds. Now, only one man was left to answer the desperate cries echoing through the forest. Medic! For God's sake, medic! Private Cowan moved. He would later recall the sound as a constant, rolling thunder, punctuated by the sharper cracks of nearby tree bursts. The air was thick with the smell of cordite, pine sap, and blood. He crawled from shell crater to fighting hole, the freezing mud caking his uniform. His training took over, assessed the wound, stopped the bleeding, morphine for the pain, sulfa powder on the wound, tagged the man, moved to the next. But with every man he treated, his kit grew lighter. The morphine syrettes, so precious, were spent. The rolls of gauze and packets of sulfa powder dwindled. By dusk, his official supplies were gone. Yet the shells kept falling. The cries for help did not stop. Fear, cold, and a crushing sense of responsibility gripped the young medic. He was looking at dozens of wounded men scattered across a killing zone, with night approaching and the temperature plummeting. He had nothing left from the United States Army Medical Department to give them. He was alone. This was the moment of absolute crisis. The wave of casualties was real. It would eventually reach nearly 100. Wounded from his company and adjacent units in his sector. The enemy fire made evacuation impossible. The aid station was miles away through impassable forest. And Cowan's medical kit was empty. He looked at the wounded around him. Men were shivering, going into shock from blood loss and the bitter cold. Without bandages, they would bleed out. Without covering, they would succumb to hypothermia. Without some form of pain relief, their suffering would be unimaginable. Then, he made his decision. He would not leave, and he would not let them die. If the army could not supply him, he would find his supplies on the battlefield. His kit was no longer the pouches on his belt. His kit became his own ingenuity, his sheer will, and the brutal economy of the battlefield itself. Cowan began to improvise with a desperate, macabre creativity. He scavenged. He used his own uniform and those of the wounded. He tore strips from rain ponchos, wool field jackets, and even the less damaged sections of bloody uniforms to fashion crude but effective bandages and compression dressings. When he needed splints for compound fractures, he used broken branches, rifle slings, and belts to immobilize the shattered limbs. For warmth, he consolidated the wounded into the largest, deepest shell holes and foxholes he could find, covering them with multiple overcoats and shelter halves to create a pitiful semblance of insulation against the German night. He moved constantly among them, not just as a medic, but as a guardian. He talked to them, reassured them, forced them to drink from his canteen. He used the only painkiller he had left, his presence. His calm determination became a lifeline. At one point, he located a discarded medical kit from a fallen comrade, scavenging a few more precious inches of gauze and perhaps a last syringe of morphine, which he would have administered to the most severely suffering. He became a single, relentless system of triage and care under direct and indirect enemy fire. Little did the German artillery spotters know, the target they were saturating with high explosives had been transformed, by one man's actions, into a ragged, makeshift field hospital. For 3 agonizing days and nights, this was the reality. Cowan slept in minutes-long snatches. He ate only what he carried in his pocket. His world shrank to the sounds of shells, the moans of the wounded, the feel of a pulse under his muddy fingers, and the endless grinding work of keeping death at bay. He fought not with a rifle, but with rags and resolve. His weapon was compassion, his armor was courage. Finally, on November 19th, a combination of a slight shift in the front lines and a risky relief effort allowed stretcher teams to reach Cowan's position. What they found was staggering. Dozens of men, who by all rights should have perished from wounds, exposure, or shock, were alive. Through his relentless, improvised care, Private First Class Richard Cowan had saved the lives of the overwhelming majority of the wounded in his sector. The exact number is lost to history, but it was certainly in the scores, approaching the titular 100%. The cost to Cowan was immense. He was physically exhausted, suffering from what would now be recognized as severe combat stress. But he had upheld the sacred creed of the medic, "I will not falter and I will not fail." For his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. His story is a stark lesson in the Hurtgen Forest campaign, a battle often remembered for its feudal brutality and high command blunders. But within that tragedy are stories of unimaginable individual heroism. Cowan's legacy is the ultimate testament to the human spirit's ability to create order from chaos, to find tools where none exist, and to value a single life amidst the industrial-scale slaughter of war. He proved that the most essential piece of medical equipment was not in a pouch, but in the heart. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.